Okay, Brazos County Commissioner will meet in workshop session September the 5th, 9:30 at the Brazos County Administration Building, 200 South Texas Avenue. First item is call to order, and the second is presentation and discussion of the FY 2023-24 county budget. Katie.
Good morning. So we had a few changes. In most cases, it's just making the budget a little more accurate. We had some estimates in there. Nina's got it up on the screen. We are currently at a deficit of $12,926,842 with regards to more expenditures than revenue, excuse me. The main changes since last Wednesday is the juvenile board supplement for 472nd. We went ahead and added that in. We went ahead and created a juvenile public defender position in case we need it during the year if something happens and we have an opportunity or need to go ahead and put that defender on. We decreased the transfer to the to the grant fund. We corrected a position salary in the county judge's office and county court at law 1. Various amounts. We went up on down on the county judge, but we went up on the county court at law. Transfer to position salary for juvenile and a correction in mine because we took the salary out. We had too many salaries in there for the grant position because we have that for a contract instead of an actual position, so we were able to save those funds. The next page includes all the same changes, but it includes the capital projects, and so it's showing a negative of $45,389,279. The difference between the $12 million and the $45 million is capital projects and projects rolling that we were unable to finish or do not anticipate finishing this fiscal year. The only change in the capital was we're rolling an additional $25,000 for the High Street contract to remediate Oracle with HCM issues. And then the last that we have is a summary of positions. I had hoped that we wouldn't add as many positions as we did last year, and we didn't add, okay, we did. We added that many positions, but it's not as much money because we added 18 positions. Some of those, actually several of those, are where we added just the health insurance, added the position, but zero funding. It's our net during the year. In case something happens, we have a position available to address needs as they come up. So now we're ready for questions.
Yeah. Are we doing it in the 23 budget or the 24 budget, the new voting machines that we have to buy?
Where do we stand on that? We found out that they have them if we have the order ASAP. So we've already placed the order, so they're in fiscal year 23. And they're supposed to be here by the end of September.
Okay, and that total was?
I remember 296,000.
Yes.
Charles?
There's a budget amendment.
We have not placed the order yet.
Oh, we haven't? Oh, okay.
There's a budget amendment on the agenda for today during Commissioners Court to be approved.
Yeah, it's number 6. It's amendment numbers, or budget amendment number 6.
We haven't ordered them. There were some questions that came up that we want to make sure that we clarify.
About $296,000.
I did.
And that's for about a fourth of what we're going to need to comply with the law that just passed, I
Yes.
believe. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to buy another $750,000 worth of voting machines.
With
Yeah,
regard, I know we're going to talk about this in executive session, but kind of, I guess the questions I have is have we gotten information back from Allison Bass from the
I think
interpretation of?
I think that might need to wait till executive session, considering that
That's fine.
that happens to be a.
Yeah, so, and I guess a question,
Speak into the mic, please, Steve.
I guess another question I would have there is, well, we'll wait until we get to the regular meeting agenda. I've got a few questions. And the first one was, were there any projects in the current budget that were not completed due to a lack of funding?
No.
Okay, so there were no projects that were in the approved budget that did not happen because there were not funds available to make those things happen?
Because we have fund balance.
Well,
We had budgeted them, and no, there was not a lack of funding.
okay. Yeah, because some people, I had heard from some people that had been communicated, and I just wanted to get that on the record. And then the result of last year's no new revenue tax rate.
Yes, sir.
Generated, after we look at our spending versus our budgeted allocations, did that generate a deficit like was, or a surplus?
Projections indicate we will have a surplus of $21 million at the end of September
Okay.
2023.
So at the no new revenue rate, which means taxes were not raised, increased last year, property taxes were not, we're going to generate a $21 million surplus.
Yes, that's
Is what's
the
projected.
current estimate, yes, sir.
We've got a month to go, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then the fund balance at the start of the year was $117 million.
Not counting obligations, yes.
Yes, okay. And then, so what do we anticipate the fund balance will be at the end of this year, since we're running a surplus?
Well, this year we, if you take out this, excuse me, let me make sure I get it right. If you take out the obligations, for example, the
Right.
projects that we started that we haven't finished.
Yeah, I
and
wanted
the
to
$6
get
million
that
in-
same number as that, the
You
same
want-
number that's equivalent to that 117 million. That would be not taking the 28 million out for the fund balance policy.
Well, I would have to calculate that,
Okay,
because it's not, you'd have to have to add back in the 6, add back in the 5, so we didn't use any fund balance, so I would say it's probably 117. I don't think we increased inventory significantly, so it's probably close to 117 plus 21.
okay. That's great.
If you
And
take
then-
out all the obligations
Gotcha.
and the amounts we budget,
Right. Well, I know
it's
that
down to
we're-
77.
Well, I know that we're setting up a fund balance policy that will take
We're
about
attempting to.
28, 29 million and put that into a emergency reserve in the budget itself. And I agree with that. I think that's a good way to go forward. How many open positions do we currently have?
HR?
One, 176 open?
Yes. Does that include Brazos County as a whole with Health Department and CSCD, or is it just Brazos County?
That should be everybody. 176 should include everyone.
What is
We need it.
Brazos County's? Because Health
Okay.
Department and CSCD does not count in our budget.
Right.
Correct. We would have to look at some reports to see if we can separate them out.
Right.
But we can look at that right now. We have our
Okay.
computers.
Well, those are net funded though, still. Those are net funded by their budgets?
By their budgets, but not by ours,
Right.
by Brazos County. So they
Right,
should be-
okay. Yeah, well, I don't want to overestimate that, but we're going from 982 to 1,004 positions, yet we have 176 open.
And some of those might be Health Department and CSCDs.
Yes. We can run some reports right now. and
Well, I
find out
know,
for you.
in looking at College Station ISD, is that the one you're talking about, where we have our resource officers?
Yes.
The sheriff's office has the
The sheriff's
resource
office?
office.
Yeah, and I know that they have a new piece of legislation that requires they've got to have somebody on every campus. but that's all going to be either provided for in their budget, if not additional SO officers, or it's going to be, they're going to fund it one way or the other, whether they use SOs as school resource officers or whether they hire independents.
Correct. For FY '24, there's 8 that will be funded by CSED that Sheriff's Office helps employ over there. For 2024, the remainder of the positions that are needing to be on each campus will be a contract service. And then as years go on, CSISD will have a plan on how to add additional SROs or security officers to each campus.
Okay.
And I believe Bryan ISD is doing the same thing. They signed a contract this last week at their council meeting, at their school board meeting, to contract the remaining positions open.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, then, with regard to the budget goes, would you mind, I had asked for that piece that was a 10-year. Would you mind making sure everybody has a copy of that?
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is the same, it's an updated version of the piece that Commissioner Ford and I presented when we had the workshop on the tax rate last year. And what it indicates is that if you look at that line over the last 10 years, the amount of money that we spent compared to the amount of money that we spent is on a historical basis at least 10% less than what we've budgeted. And then the revenues have been, this was not on the sheet last year, and Commissioner Berry, I don't think you were in attendance when we had this meeting last year talking about the no new revenue rate versus the
I zoomed in.
okay. But it indicates to me that if we, I guess my conclusion is this, is if we ended up with the no new revenue rate last year and we generated a $21 million surplus, and our net change in fund balance is projected to be is to bring us up to 136 million. If you look at that adopted 2023 from the 117 million, why would we want to increase, and we have 176 open positions, why would we want to propose a tax rate that would increase property taxes on property owners, both businesses as well as individuals in Brazos County, when the same math that we used last year would indicate that there would be a $7 million surplus at the no new revenue rate based on expenditures versus actual.
Nina's passing out our projections, my projections. I won't saddle her with that. My projections up through September 30th of 2027. It's information for you. Yes, we're projecting a $21 million surplus this year. I think, well, the last 2 years' surpluses have been quite large. The projections indicate when we start getting to construction of a lot of the projects that we currently have on the books to be done, that there will be a deficit. Now, it's a projection. I don't know what's actually going to happen. we'll see how fast the construction goes and where it ends up.
Yeah, at the, do you have that sheet that shows various tax rates
Yes.
and the revenue?
Yes. Nina, did you print those for?
This one?
Yes. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure we had the most updated version of it. I guess the conclusion of the, if you take a look at, yes, I think the conclusion is that from the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance,
Thank you.
what you see is that fund balance has gone up from 67 million in 2019 in more, what is that? Yeah, that's almost doubling for the end of this year. Actually,
Yes, sir.
159. And I guess the question there is we're not spending what we're budgeting, and we're collecting more in revenue than we're projecting in the budget, and that's why our fund balance is continuing to grow by a significant amount. So I don't understand where there would be any logic about increasing tax rates, or increasing taxes, excuse me, don't get me wrong, increasing the amount of people that people pay on property taxes in Brazos County when we're able to fund everything that's in the budget, and we have the capacity at the with the unused increments that we have to increase, should we need to, a 31.66% revenue in property taxes without even going to the voters, because that would be our voter approved rate.
So I hear your comments that we're not spending what we budgeted, and that we've got, whatever the number is, 160, 70 positions open that have not been filled. I guess the question is, why are they not filled? Is it from lack of adequate pay? And if that happens to be the reason, then that means that we may have to raise those positions up to actually draw people in here. If the positions were budgeted, they were needed in whatever department they were, or they wouldn't have been budgeted. And to me, it would be short-sighted to say, well, because we can't fill, or we have not filled these positions for whatever reason, and we don't know what that reason is, but because we have not filled them, then we shouldn't budget for them. Because eventually, I hope that those positions get filled. And if they get filled, then that surplus that you talk about won't be there.
Well, and also, this projection shows that in '24, we're going to be showing a deficit of $13.5 million at the end of, on this projection sheet. And you
And
have
that
to
one-
assume that we're going to fill those positions, that we have to budget for them.
Something to note on the 2024, I took the budgeted, and the actuals on expenditures are based on what percentage it looks like we're going to spend in 2023. So it's not budget. It's
Yeah, it's a projection.
hopefully more accurate projection than, because budget's, if we can spend it, or if we get to there, we can spend it.
And then it's a good thing we have fund balance for things like the election equipment that we didn't see coming. It came, we have to buy them, and that's $1 million.
Well, but that would be included in our contingency on
Right.
and in how much of our contingency that was in non-capital contingency of the 4.5, no, I'm sorry, That was in the capital contingency. How much contingency did we have?
We've budgeted 6 million for 23-24.
Okay, how much do we have this year?
Nina?
It's a little bit over 4 million.
Okay,
That was
and-
approved this year.
And how much of that 4 million did we actually spend?
So far, it's in the budget to actuals for Commissioners Court, the next
Right.
meeting.
Yeah, well, the last figures I had said we'd spent a little over $1 million of that.
That's probably true.
Okay, but I just wanted to know if we had an update of that. So we have in contingency we have over $3 million that we're not using. And that would include maybe the 250,000. So I think we're pretty well covered there. And on the projects wise, there were no projects that were in the budget that were not completed due to a lack of funding. And we
Well,
had.
we wouldn't have budgeted,
and we had-
we would not have contracted with something if we didn't have the money. That's
Well-
not an issue.
Well, it is an issue because we had, at the tax rate that was proposed last year before you were forced to the no new revenue rate, there was $7 million that went into capital contingency that already had $4.5 million there. And how much of that $4.5 million, not even the $7 million, that was added on the budget that was approved based on that, how much of that $4.5 million did we actually use in capital?
2.7.
Okay, so we have an excess in capital there too, plus there was 7 million, so, and I understand, as far as the 176 open, we increased and targeted specifically in last year's budget those salaries in order to compensate them more than the 7.5% cost of living adjustment. And then this year, once again, we have, in this proposed budget, we have given authority to the sheriff's office to have a non-step pay scale, which is where most of those vacancies are in order to do that. So I think from a fiscal capacity, we're doing the part that we can do. There are other things other than fiscal capacity and paying these people more, which I'm all for. But we've made provisions. We made provisions last year, and we're making provisions in this budget even furthering that. So
We've still got 100 and whatever the number is, openings now.
We have, up to date, as of right now, 141 total vacancies. 113 of those are Brazos County. So 113 is our vacancies right now. Okay?
wow, that's a big delta from 176.
Yes.
Yeah.
How do we account for those 63 difference?
We were looking at July data. 176 is from July data. We do this on a monthly basis.
Oh,
And so beginning of September, we're going to
okay.
be looking at August
So
data.
the first number we got was incorrect. It wasn't even incorrect prior to looking at the outside agencies.
It was outdated. That's correct. Because we were
Okay.
looking, we do it once a month.
Well, thank you. I
And we
always
haven't
always
been
like
able
to
to get
have,
to this
well,
month
always
yet.
like to have good updated figures.
Correct. And we have 11 in orientation this morning, so,
Good.
yep.
Well, hopefully, and that will happen, that will take place to get those people to where they're adequately compensated, where we can recruit and retain. But I guess the simple math, once again, is if you take the fact that we spend 10% less than what we budget to spend, and on this page right here, if you take a look at it, we're budgeting expenditures of $163 million, correct?
Yes, sir.
Almost 164. If we don't spend 10% of that, which is historically goes all the way back 10 years, the figures more recently have been higher than that, but even if we go back pre-COVID, 10% is a very conservative figure because it runs about 12% on average. 10% of that 163 million is $16.3 million. that covers our revenues less expenditures and forecast that we would have a surplus, at the no new revenue rate, we would have a surplus of $3.5 million. Last year, that was $2.5 million using that same math, and it's turned out to be 21 million. There is no reason that we should do anything other than the no new revenue rate again until we find things out, because we've got to find things out on where we are. Once we get to full employment, we still have the ability to increase revenue by this year almost $31 million, and we have the ability to increase revenue by $24.5 million just using the last 2 years unused increment without going to the voters for approval. I don't see any reason that we should have a tax rate proposed that should be anything other than the no new revenue rate once again.
So what else you got?
That's it.
Okay. Any other comments, discussion? And
Well, we have a discussion on item number 13 on our
Right.
regular agenda to discuss the tax rate, so
Yep.
I'll reserve my comments till then.
Okay. All right, well, we will adjourn the workshop, and we'll have a break so y'all can get set up, and we'll start the regular meeting probably just after 10 o'clock.
2 minutes to spare.